Charmander's here. Alright, so today I bring to you the top 5 most powerful Premier Cup teams that I have with Talonflame XL. As you know, Talonflame XL has been recently popular and has been really hyping up since its release for Community Day. However, the thing about it is, I actually had a little bit of a hard time. Because, you know, Talonflame's really good in Great League, and Ultra League it's even better, but, like, you know, like, this thing's expensive. Talonflame XL is what happens when you bring someone to the shopping mall, and, well, if you bring your significant other to the shopping mall, and you tell them, hey, you can buy whatever you want, and it's hella expensive, that's Talonflame. Talonflame XL is really expensive. It costs 296 candy, and don't even ask me how much Stardust it takes. Anyways, Talonflame XL is a beast in Ultra Premier as well as Open Ultra League. However, most of you are probably going to play in Ultra Premier Cup, so this is why I did it for Ultra Premier Cup. As you see here, Talonflame XL is best used in the lead and closer. Doesn't really change from Great League. It's not a fantastic switch. I would switch into it. I would only switch in a Talonflame if you have a really positive matchup. For example, if you look here against things like Gallade, because you essentially wall Gallade without confusion, or with the exception of confusion, because for Gallade, most Gallades are rocking Leaf Blade Close Combat. Because of that, you resist both of those moves, along with Obama Snow. If you get one of those things thrown into you, then you can do it, but that's pretty much Talonflame in a nutshell. The thing that makes Talonflame kind of dangerous to use in this meta is that Dragonite and Water types are very popular in Ultra Premier. Yes, Talonflame can beat Swampert in the 2-shield if you're able to land a Brave Bird through shields, but it's still very, very difficult. So, but with the rise of the fire typing, Talonflame might be a lot more popular, but at the same time, you might see more water types. So, without further ado, I bring to you the most powerful teams I could think of. It took me actually took me a little bit, because I was like, wow, I was trying to find out the most viable teams that you can use that aren't super expensive and you can use for Ultra Premier with Talonflame XL. Okay, so team number 1 features Talonflame, Snorlax, Sirfetch'd. Talonflame is your lead. So the thing about Talonflame and what makes it really good, if you watch my video on my top 5 Talonflame teams for Great League, Talonflame does a ton of damage if you could Brave Bird through shields. So it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent to make a decision whether they want to eat a lot of damage or possibly risk a lot of damage or to use a shield. So that's what makes Talonflame really good in the lead. It can also beat Swampert into 2-shield, again, as long as you can Brave Bird through shield. So Talonflame, that's what makes it the number 12 lead in Ultra Premier. It can deal a huge amount of damage over time, especially if you get those double weak, like Excavalier, for example, those that are double weak to fire, like Bug and Steel types, then you absolutely melt them with Incinerate. So Talonflame's really good. So the team I featured you over here is Snorlax as your safe switch and Sirfetch'd as your closer. Sirfetch'd works really well because Leaf Blade will yeet a lot of grass. Like a Swampert will get yeeted by one Leaf Blade, and Close Combat will most likely one-shot a lot of things in the back. Snorlax is your safe switch because it's incredibly bulky, it's a great generalist, and as long as you don't get a Machamp thrown into you, or just a fighter in general, Snorlax still does very, very well. Now, the thing about it is, this team is it has a lot of coverage. This is actually one of the better teams I could come up with Talonflame as a lead. Talonflame's a little difficult because, like you see here, the bulk is a C, but I'm not really even worried about the bulk. It's just the fact that what can fire cover? Not a lot of things cover both fire and flying. That's why Talonflame is so good. It's not going to get walled by a lot of things, so that's what makes it really powerful. Pretty safe and consistent. Snorlax is very bulky, makes up the bulk of this team, and you can nuke with either Sirfetch'd or Talonflame. As you see here, it does really well against the meta. Your biggest threat's going to be Machamp. So because Incinerate is so slow, that's why Machamp can beat you in the 1-shield. If you have to shield Rock Slide basically from Machamp. If you can't shield the Rock Slide, you lose. But if you can shield the Rock Slide, what you can do is you can take both shields from Machamp, pivot into Sirfetch'd, and do something fancy. But you can leave Machamp with no shields or something. There's play with Machamp against it. Of course, you can nuke it with one Brave Bird. Against the majority of other picks, as you see here, Surfetch, Venusaur, Excavalier, Gallade, a lot of things you do beat a lot of lead combos, and like I said, even if you do lose the lead, you can still possibly brave through shields. Anything you see here will take heavy damage from either one of Talonflame's moves, especially Brave Bird, so it makes the Burb really good. Now, as I mentioned, your biggest threat with this team is going to be Machamp. Machamp, anything with rock, obviously Talonflame is weak to rock types, double weak to rock types because of fire, so that's why Talonflame gets yeeted by rocks. Yes, 1,000 pounds of rocks will kill your beloved fire chicken. KFC's good, so is Church's chicken, but you know what? If you throw them into the trash can and then the trash can goes over your head, it does a lot of damage, which is... Okay, that's kind of a bad analogy. I mean, that's like Rock Slide or is like, you have a bunch of, I don't know. Yeah, that's what it is. You dump like 5,000 Crustals from like an avalanche and then poof, and then you die. It's that simple. Anyways, as you see here, Machamp is your biggest threat. You do well against a lot of other things, but like I mentioned before, if you do lose the lead against Talonflame, you have two choices and the lead. One, you can either burp through shields, or attempt to burp through shields, or come out with shield advantage. That's your play with it. As you see, very good against a lot of things in the meta. Again, Snorlax is your safe switch, Surfetch is your closer. Pretty generic team, and these three mons are pretty available, except for XL Talonflame, just because it's expensive. This team has a threat score of 581. It's one of the lowest threat scores I could find. It was very difficult to find a combination of threat scores that would be very low. Now, the threat score isn't a super indication of the team or its strategies. However, it gives you a general basis of what you can cover, what you can't. The lower, the better. So this team has, like, I found, like, for the first, like, hour, I found a lot of, not really hour, but like 30 minutes, I found a lot of things over 600. So I try to really figure out how I can lower the threat for Talonflame, because Talonflame isn't the bulkiest thing in the world. And even though you do have a moveset that's not essentially resisted by a lot of things, it's still pretty slow to incinerate. So just wanted to put that out there. Alright, team number 2 features Talonflame in the lead, Gallade, followed by Magnezone as your closer. Now, after doing a little bit of research, Talonflame and Magnezone actually complement each other really well for some odd reason. I think it's because Magnezone and like Talonflame can burp through a lot of things, and Magnezone's Wild Charge does heavy damage. So again, these two core, like Talonflame and Magnezone, they do really well together as coverage. You have Gallade as your safe switch. I know a lot of people love Gallade as a safe switch. Gallade is a really popular Ultra Premier safe switch. Talonflame and Gallade, they don't work too well together, honestly. Unfortunately, like, Gallade does cover Talonflame in a sense because it has Leaf Blade. However, it just really depends, like, how your matches play out. But they're still very, very powerful together. As you see, this team overall has good coverage, not a lot of bulk. This team is basically nuke everything to oblivion, take your opponent's shields, and, yeah. Basically, take your opponent's shields and nuke them to oblivion. That's what this team is. With Gallade as your safe switch, you're either going to take shields, and then you're going to be able to farm down your opponent's mon that comes in, or you could do something fancy like that. Then you just nuke everything in the back. It has heavy pressure, does a lot of damage, actually. So this team is very, very interesting. So, if you see down here, your biggest... Like, I know it says here your biggest weakness is Machamp, but Talonflame XL isn't really that bad against Machamp, because like what I mentioned with the previous team, if you can burp through shield, it's fine, but it puts more pressure on the Machamp to shield rather than you, because in 15 turns, you will gain enough energy to burp. For them, it still takes, let's see, 7 times 7, 14. For them, it takes less, but overall, like, you're still, like, if you could call the Rock Slide, it's, like, they're gonna shield. 9 times out of 10, your opponent will probably shield because one burb will KO Machamp, but yeah. Now, other Magnezones, this team is a little weak to electric types just because, as you see, fellow Magnezones are going to give you a hard time. The thing about it is, however, is that with Gallade can close combat Magnezone. So if you close combat through Magnezone, you deal heavy damage. So again, it's just really how the game plays out. Gengar is also a little bit of a problem, as you see here. However, with Gengar's really glassy. So as long as you don't eat a shot, well, there's a lot of ways you can play out. You could eat the Shadow Ball, you get the Shadow Punch, you could play the bait game, up to you. Anyways, this team's potential weaknesses. The biggest threat for this team, other than Machamp, like I mentioned with the rock typings of the previous team, is actually some very odd stuff. Electric types will give you a little bit of a problem, as you see here. You got Raichu, you got Mamoswine, etc. However, like I mentioned before, it really depends how it plays out. With your, like, you won't see the top 3 very often. I would say your biggest bets are going to be Machamp and Magnezone. And I already told you how to play that. If you do see the Electric Treat, say switch into Galade, take Shield, and then nuke with Talonflame or Magnezone. As you see, this team's threat score is pretty high. However, if you do like playing that high pressure, high nuke game, this team is for you. And like I said, Galade, Talonflame and Galade don't mix well together just because they're combined bulk. However, you can do a lot of plays if you like living dangerously, like I do. This team will nuke and destroy a lot of things. A lot. Team number 3 features Talonflame in the back. Now, for those of you that really love having Swampert leads, because for some odd reason, like the most popularly, well, not really the most popular one, but like the pattern that I've seen since like season 1 and since before like even the preseason is Swampert in the lead in Ultra League, and in Ultra Premier you can see it a lot too. So if you like Swamperts, this is for you. The Mudboy and Mudboys is going to, and it works really well. This team actually works really well in combination with Magnezone. Magnezone will be your safe switch. Like I mentioned, Talonflame and Magnezone complement each other really well, so I put it in this team. Magnezone's also a pretty good safe switch. As you see, this team actually has a ridiculous amount of coverage. It covers a lot of typings, not a lot of bulk, like I mentioned before. In Ultra League and Ultra Premier, not a lot of things are going to have bulk, unless it's like a Snorlax or anything like that, but everything does like a ton of damage. It's pretty safe, not super consistent, only because of the fact that, well, it's pretty much like the previous team. Like, with Talonflame or Magnezone and combined together, you're going to break shields or nuke through things. That's pretty much it. You're not really going to depend, yes, it consistently says you're going to depend on baits, but if you're crazy like me, and you've seen how things nuke through things, your opponent's going to be pretty scared to shield with Talonflame and a Magnezone as your parry. As you see here, the reason why Swampert's a great lead is because if you can catch the electric lead, it covers Magnezone and Talonflame really well. Along with that, Swampert does really well against Machamp, as you see here. So it does very good. Swampert, the Mudshot Hydro Earthquake combo is just so powerful, or even, yeah, it's so powerful that it's going to put a lot of pressure on your opponent. Does well against a lot of popular meta picks, as you see here, unless it's other water types, unless it's other water types like Empoleon and Jellicent. However, Empoleon isn't a bad matchup because with Empoleon you can threaten with Earthquake, so there's still a lot of play you have against the Emperor Steel Penguin. This team actually doesn't have it. Like, there's one thing that covers everything, but if your biggest weakness, I would have to say it's probably Surf Edge. Surf Edge does threaten really hard with Leaf Blade, and it wins CMP against your Swampert. So Machamp not so much because you can Hydro Cannon it to death, but Surf Edge, if it's carrying Leaf Blade, which most of them are, it's going to give you a hard time. So I would definitely shield or figure out what you want to do with the switch in. You can switch out into Magnezone, double Wild Charge, and take out Surf Edge, and if you want to say switch out, or you can take both of Surf Edge's shield. It's because Surf Edge isn't super thick, like, you can sack Swampert as your lead and use Talonflame to nuke it, etc. There's a lot of plays you can make here. Again, Magnezone's your safe switch, take the shield, nuke in the back, standard procedure with a Talonflame XL in the back. As you see, pretty good threat score. Goes below 600. It's very difficult to find teams that go below 600 just because Ultra Premier is very, very diverse. However, if you key this, PvPoke does key in on a lot of like popular patterns and like the most meta things you will find. So does really well. This team will serve you very good. The only concern I have is that, like I mentioned before, is that Surf Edge does have Leaf Blade, so if you have Surf Edge in the back, it can give you a problem. Hopefully it doesn't have Night Slash, and hopefully it doesn't get the boost. Other than that, you're going to do perfectly fine with this team. Alright, if you really want a team where you like nuking everything to death, and you're really confident in doing it, this team is really, really good. So this features Magnezone in the lead, Surf Edge, and Talonflame. So this team doesn't really have a safe switch. So if you play this team, use it at your own risk. I've simmed with it before, and if you use it well, you basically murder a lot of things. But like I said, don't recommend this team heavily unless you really want. If you just want to blow things up and you're really good at confidently like baiting, etc., this team can work really well. Features Magnezone, Surf Edge, and Talonflame. As you see here, great coverage, great safety as well. It's safe in the sense that Magnezone can take shields from you and put shield pressure, but other than that, not really much. Talonflame in the back is your standard nuke city if you can big boat shields. Well, that's basically Surfetched and Magnezone's job. Break boat shields, save shields for the back, and have Talonflame go to town. As you see here, you do really well against a lot of meta picks, minus whatever Magnezone is weak to. And even if you're weak against it, Surfetch can cover. You can sack your lead, you could do something, you could do some fancy plays. The only biggest threat is basically ground types, which is Swampert. You can pivot out of Swampert, send in Surfetch, Leaf Blade down, do whatever you want, or leave it without shields. You can beat Swampert as long as you can... If you can burn it with Talonflame, you can beat Swampert. So that's your basic win con against a Swampert, is to nuke it with a bird from Talonflame. As you see, this team has a ridiculously low threat score. It was very difficult to find a team like this that can actually threaten the meta pretty hard. And this is the lowest threat score I've actually, seen. So, in a sense, this is the best team I could find. But it's very difficult to play, because like I mentioned, you don't really have a safe switch. The basic strategy of this team is to sack your lead, or if you get into a really bad matchup, like with Swampert, you can swap into Surfetch, take shields, or take all the shields you can with Surfetch and Magnezone and have Talonflame sweep. There's a lot of things you can do. But like I mentioned, this team has the lowest threat score I've ever made. It does very, very well just by the sheer pressure of this entire team. So, again, does very well. Does very well. If you get the electric lead, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of ways you could play out of things, but like I said, general strategy, sack Magnezone, nuke through both shields, and then send in Surfetched or Talonflame, pivot around, save your shields, nuke, and end your opponent's life. That's basically the strat of this team. Does really well against a lot of top meta picks and proper meta picks, and there's a lot of ways you can play out and pattern your way through. Alright, so I usually feature the best team I could think of for the back, but this team's very weird. So Talonflame is a very powerful pick. What you want to kind of do is couple it with two bulky picks and two things that either have high pressure or high damage and do really well against the Ultra Premier meta. This one is very strange. So Talonflame, Lapras, and Meganium XL. Yes, Meganium can go XL. Meganium, you can catch it, as you see here, here's the IVs. It needs 0 attack, 14, 13. It's a level 50, 51. Level 50 works too. Doesn't really make much of a difference. However, I would give, if you could give anything, like I just gave it the extra. Even if it doesn't have it, it's still very powerful. So that's 50, 51, as you see here. Still very, very powerful team. The only issue with this team is Meganium XL is kind of hard to find. If you play a lot, which... If you play more than the average human being, well, even more than the average human being, and you have a lot of spawns, because this team's really dependent on you having a lot of Chikorritas during sunny weather. Because during sunny weather, you can catch Chikorita, and during the Johto event, or Johto celebration, Chikorita was popping a lot in sunny weather. So if you have the candy for Meganium XL, this thing is very, very strong. As you see here, across the board, B's and A's. It's very hard to find a team that has good coverage and covers a lot of the other bases, or decently. As you see here, this team does really well. Lapras is your safe switch. Meganium is your closer. What makes this team very good is if someone tries to safe switch their water type into you, Meganium XL is a beast. It does so much damage, it's ridiculous. But however, you also have Lapras as a safe switch and Meganium in the back. Both are very bulky, both are very powerful. As you see here, this team does really, really well against a lot of things. Machamp is the bane of existence for almost every Talonflame team. Even though you could beat it, the fact of the matter is, if you get rock slided, you're dead. It's that simple. So you're either going to take their shields or you're going to take their Machamp. It's really up to you in how that match plays out. Otherwise, you do very well against a lot of other picks, as you see here. For your threats... As you see here, as your threats, your biggest threat is actually Machamp and Honchkrow. This team's and the electric types, which are basically, well, I already explained like how leads work, etc, etc, etc. However, for this general basis or how you play this team, Lapras is your safe switch and Meganium closes it out. Lapras, you can take shields, win back switch, and then you can figure out what you want to do. As you see, Meganium covers a lot what Talonflame doesn't beat. So if you can't beat whatever's in the lead, basically Lapras, you try to take back switch, and then you line up with Meganium. So as you see there, but it's very, it's like, it's really, so the biggest weakness of this team and the reason why it's kind of like iffy, or even though I like it a lot and I've like ran a few sims with it, I don't like Meganium for one reason: Dragonite. And just other flyers in general. Ultra Premier is infested with flyers, and like I said, Dragonite's a really popular lead, which is probably the biggest problem of this team. Lapras is going, but if you can sack Talonflame, like I said, if you burp Dragonite, you're going to do heavy damage. So you can still employ the Talonflame, burp through the shield, or per pressure shield strategy, farm down Lapras, and do a bunch of other things. But this team overall, as far as like overall ability, it has a pretty, it does really well against auto meta, has good bulk and good across the board, and covers the meta really well. The only thing that I like really doesn't like, I wanted, like, Meganium is kind of budgety and XL is not, just because XL, it's not likely you have a Meganium XL. If you do, this team can work for you really, really well. If you don't, team number 4, I think if you are really good about it, I gave you 4 other teams that you can try out. But this team is definitely the one like I like the most, just because, like I said, it has a sizable amount of bulk, good pressure, and there's a lot of ways you could pivot out. And Lapras is a very strong safe switch, so a lot of things you can do, but it just like I said, it really depends. The big thing that kind of sucks with this team is basically Magnet Zone as well. Electric types, a double weak to electric, which is a little, like, it's not super popular, but it's uncommon. It's not, you can see it. If you do happen to see that combination, Meganium, then you'll have to switch to Meganium XL. Because well, you could still take back switch with Lapras, but you're probably going to come out without shield. Or you're probably going to come out with shield disadvantage, or something of that sort. But it just really depends. Again, I really like this team, but it's really to electric types. Well, not all of them, but yeah, just how I mentioned. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this. If you guys have other teams that you would like me to build, you can put it in the comments. If it's something that's pretty easy, I can do the request. Like, it's when you do this and you make 7 times, when you build top teams for 7 times, I've done it 7 times, you get pretty good about building teams and like seeing weaknesses and whatnot. But if you have a team that you want me to think or like see around, I can give you quick advice, or I do a little bit of like theory crafting in my own time just to see what happens. And I've done a lot of things as far as like, well, I'm the only person to make rank 10 with a Hydreigon or 3000 elo with a Hydreigon, so I'm pretty experienced. Anyways, I hope these teams serve you guys well. If you are looking to open Ultra League, I will have that video up soon. Good luck and go Bally Sits, and I will see you guys on the next video.